Hello friends, I welcome you to the last lecture of this course titled Psychology of Stress, Health and Wellbeing. So, this is the last lecture of this course and this is last lecture of the module 12, which is the last module, and overall this is lecture number 34. So, in the module number 11 and module 12, these two modules were specifically dedicated to understand eudynamic concepts of well-being. So, in the module 11 we have discussed some specific eudynamic well-being concepts such as self-actualization from the perspective of humanistic psychology, and we have also discussed in this module the concepts of meaning and purpose in life. We have also discussed self-determination and motivation, and today we will talk about the concept of life goals. So, these are very specific eudynamic well-being concepts. The idea is that these are the concepts of well-being which are beyond just emotional feelings or feeling good about life. These are about long-term goals and the growth in life and self-actualization. So, in this context today as a last lecture we will talk about the concept of life goals and how they are connected to our sense of well-being. So, we will talk about what are life goals. We will talk about the concept of intrinsic and extrinsic life goals. So, we will also talk about life goals and how it is related to well-being, and at the end we will talk about the concept of SMART goals. So, what are life goals? So, life goals basically can be defined as internal representations of desired outcomes. So, basically we represent certain outcomes that we want to achieve in our life mentally or internally. Those representations can be called as life goals. So, when we use the term life goals, these are basically more core goals of our life. They are not just short term goals, but core goals that we want to achieve in our life. So certain basically when we talk about life goals, we are trying to address or understand the questions such as what are we going to do with our life, what are the things that we want to achieve in our life. So, those are the things that we seek or try to understand or try to try to seek answers to this question in terms of finding life goals or achieving life goals. So, people generally associate happy and meaningful life with their life goals and wishes for the future as they give meaning and structure to our lives. So, one thing is very important, as we have discussed meaning and purpose in life in the last lecture. Life goals gives us sense of meaning and direction in our life. So, meaning and purpose in life are very strongly connected to our goals that we set in our life, and when we are in the process of achieving those goals, we feel a sense of direction, we feel a sense of meaning in our life, meaning and purpose in our life, and we already know meaning and purpose in our life is very strongly connected to our sense of well-being. Goals indicate a person's future orientation and meaning of life. So, basically whenever we are talking about goals, we are talking about something that we want to achieve in future or some target that we want to reach in future. So, therefore, it is the future orientation is very much inbuilt in the concept of life goals. Therefore, knowing one's goals help us to better understand his or her present and future behavior. So, setting life goals and achieving life goals determines our present as well as future behavior. So, life goals are core goals, personal strivings, personal projects, life tasks and future aspirations by which we direct our lives. So, basically this may include life goals these are core goals, important more major goals that we want to achieve in our life. It also includes our personal strivings, personal projects that we want to do in our life, life task, future aspiration, etc., etc. All this can be collectively all these aspects are collectively can be discussed under the concept of life goals. So, life goals are different from short term goals as they direct our life for an extended period of life. So, short term goals can be very short term, let us say in a week you want to achieve something or in a month you want to achieve something. So, those kind of targets can be called as short term goals. However, life goals are more extended, their focus, or basically our life goals are oriented towards more long term and extended period of time. So, what is the relationship between life goals and well-being? Psychologists generally see goal striving as vital to the well-being and good life, as we all feel happiness when we think we are making reasonable progress towards the realization of our goals. So, most of the research indicates that setting life goals and achieving life goals or working towards those life goals are positively associated with our sense of well-being. It could be both hedonic well-being as well as eudaimonic well-being, because we feel happy when we think we are making reasonable progress towards the realization of our goals. People whose research also indicates that people who set significant and important goals are happier as compared to those who do not have such goals. Research also indicates that people who have set significant or important goals in their life, they are much more happier than people who don't set such goals. Also it is possible that happy people place more importance to their goals and believe they are likely to attain them. So it is also possible that other way around explanation can be possible, that happy people, they set more significant goals and try to achieve them. It is also possible, and it is also possible that by setting goals and achieving them we become happier. So it can be both ways of explanations are possible. So setting important goals and making a progress in achieving them enhances our chances of long term well-being. So when we set important goals, significant goals which defines our life, our identity, and when we make progress in achieving them, it increases our sense of meaning and purpose in life, directions in our life, and enhances our sense of well-being. Now when we talk about goals or life goals, there can be two categorization under this. One is called as extrinsic life goals and another is called as intrinsic life goals. So let us see what is the difference between these two categories of life goals. So Kessler and Ryan in 2001 they distinguished between these two categories. One is called intrinsic life goals. So by intrinsic life goal we mean that the life goals which are consistent with our inner needs and values. So that is why they are called as intrinsic life goals. So these are the goals which are consistent or concordant with our inner needs and our inner nature. So intrinsic life goals involves goals such as personal growth, emotional intimacy, community service. Here contents of goals are naturally consistent with our nature and needs. Intrinsic goals emerge from natural growth tendencies to expand self-knowledge and deeper connection with others. So intrinsic goals generally emerge from within us and which are in tune with our growth tendencies and self-actualization tendencies, and it also helps us to connect with other people. So that is why they are called intrinsic life goals. Somehow they are in tune with our intrinsic nature and needs and our actualization tendencies. Extrinsic life goals on the other hand, they involve mostly things such as financial success, physical attractiveness, social fame, popularity. These are mostly externally projected goals. They may not be in tune with your own intrinsic nature or your growth tendencies. Rather, we pick those goals from the projections of outside world, such as to be financially very successful, physically attractive, social fame, popularity. So in that context they are called as extrinsic life goals. Here contents of goals are less consistent with our nature and intrinsic needs. They may not be very consistent with our intrinsic nature and needs, which are basically oriented towards growth and self actualization. Extrinsic goals are strongly shaped by cultural and societal beliefs and norms. Most of these extrinsic goals are shaped by societal and cultural beliefs and norms, and we pick them from those externally projected norms and goals, and then we set to achieve those goals, and therefore they may not be all the time in tune with our intrinsic nature. So intrinsic and extrinsic goals may be connected to our well-being in a different ways. So, we will see some of the research findings. So, research indicates that intrinsic and extrinsic goals differ in their relations to well-being. How they differ in terms of their connection with well-being, let us see. It appears that the investment in or success at intrinsic goal is associated with enhanced well-being. People primarily concerned with intrinsic goals report higher satisfaction and happiness, higher levels of self-actualization and vitality, higher self-esteem and openness, and fewer experiences of depression, anxiety and natural health problems. So, these are some of the research findings that report that most of these research findings very clearly indicate that pursuit of intrinsic life goals are more strongly related to our diverse indicators of well-being. So, these are all different indicators of well-beings, and all this research clearly indicates that pursuit of intrinsic goal facilitates well-being, both in terms of hedonic indicators as well as eudaimomic indicators of well-being. All these results seem to generalize in various countries. So, research from diverse countries also indicates that most of this research are in same direction. So, research are almost same in even from different countries and cultures. So, it indicates that pursuit of intrinsic goal is very important in terms of enhancement of our well-being. Investment or success at extrinsic goal does not seem to enhance well-being and may actually distract from well-being. However, most of the research indicates that pursuit of typical purely extrinsic goals may not be that strongly connected to our well-being, and in many cases such pursuit of extrinsic life goals actually may act as a distraction for well-being. So, it is possible that so their connection with the well-being is not very strongly established, and in certain cases such pursuit of extrinsic life goals may be detrimental to our sense of well-being, particularly maybe certain eudaimomic concepts of well-being. Some research indicate that extrinsic goals are also associated with lower self-esteem, more drug use, more television watching, more difficult and less satisfying relationships, and acting in narcissistic and competitive manner. Certain research indicate that it is possible that too much pursuit of extrinsic life goals may be related to all these negative indicators of well-being, which indicates that our it is decreasing our sense of well-being, such as lower self-esteem, more drug use, television watching, etc., etc. However, the researches are not very clear, all the researches do not indicate this relationship in a very clearly linear fashion. Some research indicates that the relationship could be very complex. For example, some research indicate that the contents of goals, whether it is an intrinsic life goals or extrinsic life goals, is not that important in all cases. It may not be that important, at least some research indicate, but the congruence between the values a person holds and their goals seem to be more important. So, some research indicate that whether the goal is intrinsic or extrinsic is itself is not that important, rather whether the goals are congruent with the values of that person. What are my values? Do I value extrinsic life goals? Do I value intrinsic life goals? So, if I value extrinsic life goals, so pursuit of extrinsic life goals will promote well-being. So, whether the life goals are concordant or consistent with the inner values of that person also matters. So, some research indicates that intrinsic or extrinsic goals are not associated with well-being directly. So, whether it is intrinsic or extrinsic is not directly connected to well-being, rather whether it is congruent with one's values, that is more important. For example, if people value extrinsic materialistic things such as money, physical attractiveness, they will feel satisfied when they obtain them as compared to those who do not value them. So, if somebody values extrinsic goals such as physical attractiveness or money, etc., for such people pursuit of those goals will make them happy and may increase their well-being. So, intrinsic values will determine whether intrinsic goal or extrinsic goal will lead to higher well-being or not. However, the problem is in the cases of extrinsic life goals, one of the major reason is that people get very quickly adapted to them, and there is a limitation to extrinsic goals in terms of how much satisfaction and sense of well-being you derive from them. It may be very short term, as well as we get quickly adapted to those extrinsic goals. So, it is possible that satisfaction from extrinsic goals may not last, as people get adapted to them very quickly. So, this is one of the another reason that extrinsic goals may not lead to long term sense of well-being, because we get adapted to them and there is a limitation to how much satisfaction we derive from them, because most of the extrinsic goals we depend on the external circumstances, which we do not have much control over it, and they keep on changing from time to time. So, therefore, content of goals may be important, the congruence or how well one's goals match one's value is also important. So, the relationship between extrinsic and intrinsic life goals and their connection with the well-being is not very clearly defined in the research findings. So, the relationship may be little bit complex, but overall it seems that intrinsic life goals very clearly has an advantage in terms of enhancing our sense of well-being. In case of extrinsic life goals, it may lead to enhancement of well-being, but probably it will be more short term, and primarily because we get adapted to them very quickly. According to Lyubomirsky in 2000, its well-being is enhanced when people choose to pursue goals that are feasible, realistic and attainable. So, these are the characteristics of some of the goals which leads to higher sense of well-being. If goals are feasible, realistic and attainable, goals which are being progressed towards, you are able to make progress in achieving them, you are not stuck in achieving them, then it enhances our sense of well-being. Goals which are personally meaningful, goals which are highly committed to, goals which are intrinsic, goals which are concerned with the community, intimacy and growth, goals which are self-concordant and congruent with one's motive and needs, goals which are valued by one's culture, goals which are not conflicting. So, if you see all these characteristics, most of these characteristics are basically associated with intrinsic life goals, and research generally indicates that these characteristics are important in terms of enhancing our sense of well-being, if we are pursuing goals which are related to these characteristics, which are primarily related to intrinsic life goals. So, the question is why intrinsic and extrinsic goals are related to well-being differently. We have already kind of touched upon this. So, we will see some of the research explanation for this. So, this differential and relationship of intrinsic and extrinsic goals to well-being may be explained in terms of getting in touch with the deeper nature and inner happiness while pursuing intrinsic goals. So, one thing that happens while we pursue intrinsic goals, we are in touch with our deeper nature and values, and that is why we feel much more happier. We have also discussed intrinsic motivation also, where we have discussed when we are intrinsically motivated, our well-being is more likely to be we are more likely to experience higher well-being as well as higher motivation when we pursue intrinsic goals, primarily because it is in touch with our intrinsic nature as well as needs. However, people who focus excessively on extrinsic goals become dependent on outside circumstances of the time and society, and may become victims of fashion, status symbols and attractiveness. People who are too much focusing on the extrinsic goals, they become victim of the circumstances. So, continuously things projected from the outside world, societies, they become victim of that, and they kind of always, their self-esteem becomes unstable, and they always try to make themselves fit to those external projections, because they keep on changing. So, therefore, our happiness is also very fluctuating in that context, and we ignore our inner needs. So, we can get a stable sense of happiness and well-being when we are in touch with our inner sense of intrinsic nature and values, which is more stable as compared to the outside projected goals. So, therefore, extrinsic goals may deteriorate well-being, as it makes too dependent on outside circumstances for becoming happy. So, the main reason is you become too much dependent on the outside circumstances for your happiness, which is not good, because we do not have control over the outside circumstances. Things may change very rapidly, and accordingly our state of mind will keep shifting. So, it becomes more difficult to gain a stable happiness and well-being when we are pursuing too much of extrinsic goals, which keeps on changing. So, that is the main reason. Otherwise, goals, so in that context, intrinsic goal has much better advantage, because it is something that comes from within you and it is more stable and you have control over it. So, I will not talk much about goals in this lecture. These are some of the basic ideas related to life goals and how they are connected to our sense of well-being. In the end, I would like to touch on a concept which is very popular, and many of you might have heard about this. This is called as the concept of SMART goals. So, in the context of goals, particularly this idea was developed in the context of organizations and corporate sector, how to set goals which are achievable and to successfully achieve goals. So, this is an idea that was developed by George T. Doran in the context of organizational context, where he tried to give some idea, some pointers how to set goals and successfully achieve them. So, in 1981, George T. Doran, a consultant and former director of corporate planning for Washington Water Power Company, he introduced the idea of SMART goals as a way to write management goals and objectives. Particularly in the context of management, it was kind of developed, how to set goals and objectives of an organization, and these ideas are relevant in other contexts of our life also. So, let us briefly see what is this idea of SMART goals. He introduced the concept of SMART goals as a tool to create guidelines to help improve and chances of succeeding in accomplishing a goal. So, SMART is an idea which is basically acronym for few ideas. So, SMART indicates S basically means specific, M basically stands for measurable, A stands for achievable, R stands for relevant, and T stands for time bound. So, SMART goals basically these are the goals which are specific, which are measurable, which are achievable, which are relevant, and which are time bound. So, let us see what are these components. So, when for setting a goal, to get success in achieving a goal, it is important that your goals are very specific and they are not very abstract. So, a specific goal means what? You know how to go towards that goal. A very specific targets are there. When you have an abstract goal, it is difficult to find or difficult to set tasks which are to reach those goals. For example, if a company kind of sets a goal that it wants to increase the sales of a company, if this is the goal to increase the sales of a company, it is a very abstract goal. You have only idea that I want to increase, but it is not a specific goal. But if a company sets a goal, let us say I want to increase 5% sales in the next year or within this year, then it is very specific that I know that I want to increase at least by 5%. So, it is very specific. So, the idea of specificity of a goal means you very specific targets are there, you know how to go towards it. If it is an abstract, you have only vague ideas and you do not know how to proceed towards it. So, that is the idea of specific goals. So, when setting a goal, one should be specific about what you want to accomplish. It should include an answer to the popular W question, such as who will be involved in the task or the project to achieve those goals, who are the important people. You should have very clear answer to that questions. What the details about what is to accomplish, what you want to accomplish, very specifically you should have answer to this question, what I want to achieve, let us say in the next 1 year. So, that has to be very clear. When, specific time frame, by how much time, what is the target in the next 1 year. So, your target is let us say time bound, 1 year I want to achieve this. So, it has to be more specific in terms of time frame. Where, what specific locations, what are the infrastructural things that will be required, what is the specific locations that we need to explore to achieve those goals. Which, are there any obstacles or requirements to achieve those goals, what are those. Why, what is the reasons for these goals, why you are setting these goals, what is the reasons for this. Some of these questions are also relevant to other component of these SMART goals. So, the idea is try to make it as specific as possible by asking these questions, make it very specific target, so that you know where you are going and what you need to do while reaching that goal. So, first component is specific, second is measurable. So, the idea of measurable is actually connected to the concept of specificity. So, what specific matrices you are going to use to determine if you want to meet the goals or achieve that goals. As I say, if your target is, let us say I want to increase sales of a company by 5% in the next year. So, 5% is very measurable. I can measure how much percentage is going to if 5% increase of sales means what. I can very specifically measure it. For achieving 5% increase in the sales, what I need to do in a particular year, what are the specific things what need to be achieved. So, that is the meaning of a measurable things. So, basically by measurable you make goal more tangible by providing way to measure the progress. So, it becomes more tangible and you know what to do. So, basically it sets milestones by considering specific tasks to accomplish. So, your goal has to be specific, measurable, and the A is for achievable. So, that is very important. Sometimes people set goals which are difficult to achieve, some very difficult impossible goals, and they get frustrated and at the end you are not able to achieve it. So, it is very important to judge your skills and resources. It could be for in the context of organization, or it could be in one's own life, that set goals which are achievable. It may be difficult, but it has to be achievable. So, that is the thing. So, this focuses on how important a goal is to you and what you can do to make it attainable. So, it has to be attainable. It may require developing new skills. Sometimes to achieve a goal you need to develop new skill. You need more resources, or by changing attitudes to make a goal achievable. The goal is meant to inspire motivation and not discouragement. So, do not set a goals which ultimately at the end of the day will be impossible to achieve and it will discourage you. Set goals which are achievable. Maybe there is no harm in setting challenging goals. So, they may be difficult, but still achievable by increasing skills and resources. So, think about how to accomplish the goals, and if you have the tools, skills that are necessary, do you have them? If you do not have currently possess those skills and resources, consider what it to take to attain them. How can you attain them, or is it possible to attain them? So, try to look into those aspects also. R, the next component, is for relevant. The goal has to be relevant. So, if you are working in an organization, the goal whatever you are setting is, it has to be in alignment with the organizational objectives, or in the context of your personal life you are setting a goal, it has to be in alignment with your values and or the direction of your life. It should not be irrelevant goals, then ultimately you will lose interest in them. So, to keep motivation alive, it is important that these goals are in tune with, or they are relevant for your life or for your organization, they should not be irrelevant. So, relevance refers to focusing on something that makes sense with the broader life or business goals. So, they should make sense or they should be aligned with the overall objectives of your life and or organization, whatever it is. For example, if the goal is to launch a new product, it should be something that is in alignment with the overall business objectives. So, if you are trying to launch a product, it has to be in alignment with the objectives, overall objectives of the organization. Or it, let us say in the context of a personal life, let us say your intrinsic values and interests are towards, let us say, spiritual matters and pursuits, and if you set a goals which is highly materialistic, then probably there will be conflict and you will not be able to sustain motivation. So, we should be clear in terms of goals. We should set goals which are relevant or in line with alignment with our overall needs and natures, then it is more likely that we will be able to sustain motivation. T is for time bound. The last component is time bound. Time bound basically means if your goal lacks realistic timing, chances are that you are not going to succeed. So, set a realistic timing or deadline that within this deadline I want to achieve my goals. So, it gives you a makes you focused and gives you a very clear direction what to do and what I need to achieve in short term as well as long term sense. So, set a target date for deliverables that are imperative. Ask specific questions about the goal deadline and what can be accomplished within that time frame. If the goal will take 3 months to complete, it is useful to define what should be achieved halfway through the process. So, make short term as well as long term goal, short term target as well as long term target in terms of achieving that goal. So, deadlines are sometimes very important. It gives you a sense of, it creates a sense of urgency and gives you a very helps you to focus on the goal. Without deadline, then no one will be motivated to complete the task. So, that time bound time frame to achieve things are very important. So, these are some of the important ideas that are related to the concept of life goals. So, with this basically I complete the formal contents of this course. So, these are some of the important ideas that we have that are important in terms of eudaimomic concepts of well-being. So, before I end this lecture, let me briefly summarize what are the modules and what we have discussed very briefly, so that you get an overall sense of this whole course. So, this course had 12 modules and each modules we have discussed certain important concepts which are connected to each other. So, in the first module we have discussed the concept of nature and biology of stress. So, in the first module we have discussed or try to define what is the meaning of stress, what are the definitions of stress in the discipline of psychology, and what are the characteristics of stress, and also we have discussed what are the biological aspect of stress. When we experience stress, what are its impact on our biological system or physiology in terms of brain, in terms of hormones, in terms of glands. We have discussed all these mechanisms in the first module. In the second module we have discussed the connection between the stress and health, both physical health as well as mental health. So, in the context of physical health we have discussed how stress is related to infectious diseases as well as non-infectious diseases. In the context of non-infectious diseases we have specifically discussed the coronary heart disease, and in the context of infectious diseases we have discussed how stress is connected to our immune system, and in that context how stress decreases our immune system and leads to various infectious diseases. In the module 2 we have also discussed how stress is related to mental disorders. More specifically we have discussed the disorders such as acute stress disorder, post traumatic stress disorder and complex post traumatic stress disorders. In the module 3 we have discussed some positive aspect of stress and trauma, and particularly we have discussed the concept of post traumatic growth in this context, that stress and trauma sometimes may lead to certain positive outcomes also, and post traumatic growth is one such example, and we have in detail discussed the concept of post traumatic growth and theories related to it. In the module 3, we have also discussed certain personality traits that are related to stress reaction, such as type A, type B personality traits, psychological hardiness, locus of control. So, these are important traits that are very strongly related to our stress reactions. In module 4, we have discussed coping processes and strategies. We have discussed what is the meaning of coping processes, what are the different types of coping, and we have discussed some of the coping strategies which are dysfunctional in the sense that they have very limited values. They are not, they do not very successfully help us to deal with the stressful circumstances. In that context, we have discussed coping strategies such as avoidance, indulgence, and some defense mechanisms. We have also discussed the concept of constructive coping, coping which are healthy, and also we have discussed one such example in terms of, we started talking about specific examples of constructive coping such as physical ways of coping. In that context, we have discussed physical exercise. In module 5, we continued our discussion on coping processes, and we discussed more specific constructive coping techniques which are very important in terms of dealing with the stressful circumstances, such as relaxation exercises, mental ways of coping, where we have discussed how we can manipulate our thought processes to deal with our emotional problems and stressful reactions. We have also discussed coping with social support. How can social support help us to cope with the stressful circumstances? And at the end, we have discussed specific techniques of meditation and mindfulness as a stress management technique or skill. In module 6, we have discussed the concepts of well-being and happiness, where we have discussed the concept of health, mental health, concepts of well-being, types of well-being such as hedonic well-being, eudaimonic well-being, and we have also discussed the concepts of resilience. In module 7, we specifically started talking about the hedonic well-being concepts. More specifically, we call it as happiness. We discussed the concept of happiness. We have also discussed the concept of affective forecasting, and we also discussed some socio-demographic factors related to happiness such as age, income, and we have also discussed the concept of positive emotions in detail in module 7. In module 8, we have discussed or tried to address the question, can we become happier? In that context, we have discussed some of the important variables in happiness such as genetic set point, hedonic adaptation, personality traits, and then we have discussed the model of sustainable happiness model, where we discussed how can we go beyond these barriers and achieve sustainable happiness. In module 9 and 10, we have discussed specific happiness enhancing strategies, which research found are very important, and by using those strategies we can enhance our happiness sustainably. So, in module 9, we have discussed the concept of gratitude, then acts of kindness, and social comparison, how they are related to our happiness level. In module 10, we have discussed signature strengths, how signature strength can be used to enhance our well-being, and the concept of flow and how flow can be used to enhance our happiness. Module 11 and 12, we are basically focused on the idea of specific concepts related to eudaimomic well-being. In that context, in module 11, we have discussed the concept of self-actualization and self-determination and motivation. So, these are the important ideas that we have discussed in module 11. In module 12, we have discussed meaning and purpose in life, and the last lecture today we have discussed life goals and how they are related to our well-beings. So, this is in a nutshell tried to summarize what are the different concepts that we have discussed in this particular course. I hope this course will be beneficial in terms of understanding concepts, and these ideas may be helpful in terms of practically help you or you will be able to apply some of these ideas in your life to make your life little bit more enriching and fulfilling. So, with this I end today's lecture. Thank you.